Hey guys, um, back again. I figured I have a lot of things that I've watched recently that I need to have some sort of review for, because there are a lot of things that I watched that I really loved in all of 2021. So I thought I would just do a greatest hits basically from 2021, my favorite movies that I watched, my favorite shows that I watched, and just do kind of a quick review, because yeah, it's a lot of videos to try and do and I probably won't get to all of them anyway. So I will probably do 2 or 3 movies, something like that, and then a couple of shows, maybe 1 or 2, and then maybe say 1 or 2 things that I'm excited for that are coming out in 2022. So let's get into it. We'll start with the movies, and one of probably my favorite sci-fi movie that I watched in 2021, sort of the only one I think I watched that was new anyway, was Dune. It's a 3-hour long movie, it feels like a 3-hour long movie, but it's so good. Guys, it's great. There is so much lore, and they kind of just throw you into the world and have you figure it out as you go, which I love. I think that is a good way to do it, instead of having a huge amount of exposition explaining your lore and then jumping into the story, which kind of makes you lose a lot of people at the beginning. They kind of just throw you into this really cool sci-fi world, and they bring in these words and then they give you all these context clues so you can kind of figure out what things mean. And it's amazing, because there's a crap ton of lore, guys. Seriously, there's so much stuff happening, and it's kind of a barrage of information constantly hitting you. And I think it would definitely take more than one watch through to begin to understand everything. I personally only watched it once because I haven't gotten around to like watching it again, but I think I understood, or at least followed the essential things to the story, and maybe cut onto other little things. But oh my gosh, I'm not exactly sure what I expected the plot to be, but it's not what I saw. What I saw is not really what I expected the movie to be. I'd only seen I think 1 trailer for Dune. And from that, it didn't tell a lot about what the plot actually was. So I didn't really have any idea what I was getting into, but it was great. And definitely worth the first time seeing it. I'm glad it was in a theater, because I personally just love going to the theater and the massive screen, the experience of being there. And that's one of those movies that I definitely am glad I got to experience in that setting. Oh my gosh. Whew. I mean, I love everything about this movie. It's so great. But I think, honestly, my favorite character is probably Duncan Idaho. Of course, I picked the character that died. But so many characters died, but he died in probably the saddest way. Oh, seriously. It made me so sad. Guys, there's first movie of the trilogy. There's no setup. Duncan is not in the movie for that much, because he's not a main character. But that one hurt me. That one hurt me pretty bad, honestly. I kind of loved Duncan. Oh gosh. But the entire desert planet, I'm blanking on the name right now. Arrakis. I I got it. Okay. That entire planet is super cool. And the whole political fight for control of it, because if you control the planet, you control the spice, so then you control space travel in a sense. So it's both a good place to be, but also a bad place to be, depending on the situation. Because for the House Atreides, the Emperor sent them there to die. And then for the Harkonnen, it was a very, very lucrative investment for them. So it's, again, lots of lore, lots of politics. Oh, it was so great. I loved it. Oh, I honestly can't wait for the next one. It's so good, and I can't wait to see where it goes. The Fremen are really cool, and, excuse me, the sandworms, what do they call them? I have like half of it in my head. It's on the tip of my tongue, but I don't remember what they're called at the moment. But I love it. I'm a sucker for lore. It's so good. Lore and world building, and that's basically what this entire movie was. So I loved it. Another good movie that I saw last year was Dear Evan Hansen. I loved the musical. I did. And for the most part, they stayed true to the musical, to the original musical. So it was good. They unfortunately took out one of my favorite songs, but two of the songs. They took out Disappear, which is a good song, and then they took out Good For You, which is one of my favorites. Oh, that was a little disappointing, but they brought in the two new songs, Anonymous Ones, and I can't remember what the other one is called, but Anonymous Ones was a good song, and the other one was pretty good too. This was one of the situations where, usually when I go to a movie, my older brother, has done research or is the Marvel geek or whatever, so he knows about what's happening in the movie, or he's watched like all the trailers, so he knows everything that's gonna happen basically. Like, he knows more about the movie than I do. And I go in kind of just trust, either I have seen some of them enough that I'm hyped about it, or I'm equally hyped about it, so I've done the same amount, or I just go into it trusting his judgment because we have very similar opinions when it comes to movies. But this was one of the rare situations where I went in knowing everything and he went in knowing nothing. And it was great because after the movie, he turns to me and just says, "Sage, you didn't tell me I'd be feeling things today." He enjoyed it, but it was just funny. Because it really is. It is very emotional. I mean, yes, the musical is very emotional. And honestly, I think with Good For You, it's in there, it is a little bit more emotional. And it's happening live, so you get all the emotions that come with the actors in the moment, versus the movie is basically like listening to the pre-recorded album, but it's still very emotional, but not like with all the emotions coming from the live performance of it. I'm glad Ben Platt came back to play Evan. I mean, I'm sure if they had gotten someone else, it would have worked out fine, but I don't think anyone could do the songs justice except for him. So that was appreciated, and he honestly pulled off looking like a high school student very well, without facial hair. But yeah, that was another really good one. I would say the people in the movie were definitely outshined by Ben Platt, but that's because they're more on the acting side of the spectrum than the Broadway singing side of it. They were all good singers, but definitely paled in comparison to Ben Platt. This is also a rare situation where there was a movie made off of a musical, because a lot of times especially in the Disney universe, they make a movie and then they make a musical of it. But this is one of those rare occasions where the musical came first. Just an interesting note. The next movie I'm going to talk about is Spider-Man No Way Home. So I should probably put chapter titles in the description so that if you don't want to get spoilers for No Way Home, if you haven't watched it yet, which I highly recommend, you can go and skip. So I'll probably do that. Anyway, we're talking about Spider-Man No Way Home, and guys, I can't. It was so good. Best Spider-Man movie ever. I'm definitely ranting spoilers, so there are too many things to talk about not to include spoilers. It was amazing. I teared up so many times. I had so many feels. Like, okay, I literally forced myself not to cry because there were so many things happening in the movie that I didn't want to miss anything, because not only do we have all these 5 villains from the other universes, which all of them, first of all, I love that all of them were the original actors. Second, they all did an amazing job. Oh my gosh, it was so good. Not only that, but we also get the former Spider-Man. The theater was definitely that we were sitting in. It's first of all, it's one of the fullest theaters I have been in since COVID has happened. It was like fairly full. And people had been kind of vocal in their reactions throughout to like the original villains and the Daredevil cameo and some of the things that were happening already. But as soon as Andrew Garfield stepped through the magic portal, things got a heck of a lot louder. They cheered, first of all, when him and Toby came in, and every single joke, pretty much, that was made throughout the rest of the movie, people were laughing out loud. And it was appropriate. The jokes were funny. I was so glad that they brought in Andrew and Toby, and it's like, yes, I agree with all your reactions, but it did get a little bit annoying at times. Thankfully, it wasn't to the point where I was very irritated and couldn't focus on the film. It was fine, but it was like the volume. It was more than in Endgame. They were way more vocal than in Endgame. And when I went to see Endgame, it wasn't horrible, but there was a moment when Spider-Man came back and you see, and he undoes, and his mask kind of retracts, I guess, because he had the Iron Spider suit, and everyone in the theater cheered. And that was for like a minute of them cheering, and that was pretty loud. But this was a whole nother level. Oh my gosh, God. It's literally just a universe-breaking movie, because all of a sudden the multiverse exists and it's leaking into the mainstream MCU, and all these original Spider-Man characters. So now both the original Spider-Man trilogy and the Amazing Spider-Man movies are both canon in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is really cool. But like I said, I was forcing myself not to cry, and the biggest part for that was definitely when Aunt May died. Oh my gosh. I mean, I wasn't expecting them to kill her off, but as soon as she got rammed by Green Goblin's glider, I was just like, oh crap. I knew it was coming as soon as that happened. I was like, no. Because being stabbed by his own glider is how Green Goblin died in the first Spider-Man movie with Tobey. So as soon as that happened, I was like, no. Dang it. Oh, man. Okay. There are so many things. So many things. I don't know what all to talk about. The final battle with all of the villains and curing all the villains was insane. I love that Dr. Octopus got like cured and then was helping them on their side. That was awesome. And I think it fit his character really well too. So that was great. And I was talking about Aunt May's death. I just remembered that just Peter's freaking reaction. The sheer amount of rage that he has over Aunt May's death. And honestly, you see some of his anger when he's fighting Green Goblin before that, because, you know, he ruins his entire plan and like blows up the apartment, but then it just gets so much worse after Aunt May dies. It's amazing. So good. I love it. And then the other Peter's giving him a pep talk and saying, we know what it's like to lose people close to you, and you can't let the anger and the grief from that take over and turn you into this, you know, this villain, basically. Okay, all of the moments with the three of them together were amazing. They were so great. And then, oh gosh. Oh, I love that they addressed the fact that Andrew and Tom have web shooters, but Toby doesn't. The whole conversation of them talking about, okay, how does that work? Does it come out anywhere else? Oh, what was ironic was we saw it on a Sunday, and me and my brother were with my dad leading worship at a church. The fact that we had like just been having a conversation about like cursed Spider-Man, where it like comes out of different parts of his body. Oh, that was like fortuitous. Oh, but all in all, it was fantastic. It was absolutely fantastic. Oh my gosh. And everyone forgets that who Peter Parker is. He literally has no friends and no family. The scene where he's like walks into the shop, sees that their lives are better without him, and decides not to tell MJ and Ned that who he is. And him standing at the grave of Aunt May with Happy. And he doesn't know. That entire ending made me so sad. I was like almost crying through the entire last like 5 or however many minutes that was. Gosh. Okay, I'm gonna move on to shows before I turn this into like an hour-long video. We're gonna start with the 3rd and 4th seasons of Young Justice because I found a way to watch them, so I figured why not. Outsiders, in my opinion, was not great. It wasn't that good. They introduced new characters with interesting powers, but the characters themselves were not developed well. Were not developed well, and they weren't intriguing people. Powers were cool. People were just weird. I also feel like they had like too many plot lines going on. The overarching one was meta-human trafficking, which is really cool, and the concept and the darkness of this series, they were done well, but then they brought in the plot with the actual outsiders and them becoming a team, which could have worked into it well. So that one wasn't as much of a, okay, why'd you do that? They could have led into each other, but the one that got rushed the most, that shouldn't have been rushed at all, and should have been like an entire season, was the dark side plot, because they introduced the fact that Darkseid is looking for the anti-life equation. And he one of his henchmen, I guess you could call her, figures it out in one of the episodes. She figures it out, and I think it's like literally the next episode they defeat her. There's literally 2 episodes at the end of the season that cover this plot point. And the only other time that it's addressed or that Darkseid shows up is a random episode in the middle of the season. So that plot point got super rushed, and so they didn't do it justice, and it wasn't carried out very well. It was not done well, and it just made, I was not a huge fan of season 3. It was not great. Bass Boy was super annoying. I'm not gonna lie, he was super annoying in that one. He was really, really annoying. It makes sense that he was on a TV show. I understood why they made it like that, but all of the scenes where he was like on the TV show were super cheesy. They were super cheesy, and I was not a fan of it. I also hated Miss Martian's look in that. No. Who thought making her white, bald, and with like a big brow, like flesh eyebrows basically, whoever thought that was a good idea? They gave her basically the shape of Martian Manhunter's head and then made her eyes normal, that normal like brown that hers are naturally, and then bald. It was the worst costume change, like appearance change of all of the characters in that season. And no. I wasn't a fan of some of the like costume appearance changes. Hers was the worst. Aquaman's not the biggest fan of his costume. I'm also not the biggest fan of him as Aquaman. I liked him better as Aqualad. I mean, it makes sense, and I understand. Yes, it's a progression of power, and he takes on the mantle of Aquaman because the former Aquaman has to take on more the mantle of king and has to raise his family. It makes sense, but him as Aquaman, I didn't really like it. I was not a fan of him as Aquaman, and the fact that he was like leader of the league when there were a bunch of other candidates that would have been more experienced, probably better for the position, and it's like, no, he's gonna be, I get like fresh blood, but leading, it was only 2 years between season 2 and season 3. Anyway, not a huge fan of that. Season 4, on the other hand, has been amazing. I love season 4. Because I think in season 3 the biggest problem was you didn't have a lot of the original characters. Besides Nightwing, Artemis and Superboy did some stuff, but their focus of the season was on these new characters that they introduced, which don't get me wrong, I really liked Cyborg. I really did. And I will say, I did not expect them to show as much gore as they did. Going into it, it's not what I expected. There was blood. So much blood. And I did not expect them to show, in the first episode, corpses of the dead king and queen of Markovia and Cyborg's, like, open chest, skull, literally his heart. You could see his lungs and his heart. It was gruesome. I loved it, but it was gruesome and not what I expected. Anyway, it's like, yes, I loved Cyborg. They had a pretty good, that was a pretty good version of Cyborg, but pretty much every other new character that they brought in, I didn't care about. And they focused on those characters. So that made me kind of sad, and that's probably why I didn't like it as much. Whereas this one, we're focusing more, again, on the original team and the original characters. And some of the, honestly, cooler new characters that they brought in, like Orphan. I love Orphan. Her costume's cool. Her backstory's really interesting. She's actually done, she's a really well done character, and they have development in her fighting and like the dark side of her when she goes up against her mom, Lady Shiva, and the backstory with her and Batgirl, Barbara. Which I kind of like Barbara as Oracle. Oracle is cool. They didn't really explain the eye technology, I guess, because I feel like it's implants in their eyes is I think what it is. But they didn't really explain that, kind of just threw it at you, and then in season 3, and then you're just like, oh, okay. Not exactly sure how I feel about the basically computers in their eyes, but it works, and we haven't really, honestly, the things that I liked the least about season 3, they haven't brought up in season 4, and it's nice. I honestly love the look of Miss Martian in season 4. With like her original look, but with the white skin, and that I think is, yes, her, because as they say it in the show, that is her true form. That is, I think, I love that we go to Mars. I love that we go to Mars. It is awesome, and the setting of one of the saddest scenes in the season so far. I know Superboy's gone, and him and Miss Martian never got to get married. Guys, I'm not okay with this. Every time the theme song comes on and it shows his picture, I'm sad. I really do miss him. And now we cliffhanger the mid-series finale with Zatanna literally going, his spirit's in trouble. What does that even mean? What's gonna happen? I am not okay right now. I am not ready to wait an entire year to get the rest of this season. This is a money-making ploy that by HBO Max. That is what it is. They are making you wait a year so that you can't do like the however long trial to see this entire season because they're breaking it up by a year-long break. I'm not okay with this. I'm really not. But I loved the magic lore that they brought into it. I loved it. Season 4 is so much better than season 3, and I love that everything I hated about Outsiders got dumped in the dumped and not used in the 4th season. But they still use these characters, and they go back to the original characters, and it's like they almost are trying to make up for it, but they can't retcon the 3rd season. So they're just like, okay, it still happened, but we're gonna use this concept, the good parts of it, and weave that into this. So it's like, okay, it still exists, but something completely different is happening, and we're not focusing on those characters, and the characters that we brought in there are not main characters. And so I think they may have gotten some backlash about the 3rd season, and so they're trying to make the 4th season better, which I appreciate. So Anyway, one of the other shows I watched in 2021 was Shadow and Bone, which I have not read either the book series of Shadow and Bone or Six of Crows, but I have gathered that they combined them into basically just the Grishaverse show, but they chose Shadow and Bone as the title. It was really cool. It's a very cool fantasy show. It's like I want to read the books now. I have no idea if I will ever get to around to reading the books, because there are so many books I want to read, but they are on my list. But I loved the show. It was really cool. And freaking Ben Barnes is a great actor, and he did the Darkling very well. And the characters are very intriguing, and it's a really cool world that they built, and the idea of the fold and their magic system, and the fact that they have like these ropes to differentiate their gifts, and the concept of the first army and the second army, and kind of the bigotry over the Grisha. And it's so cool. It's so cool. And before anyone asks, I don't truly ship anyone in the show, because I know there's a whole thing between Malina, which is Mal and Alina, and Darklina, which is the Darkling and Alina. I don't have any ships at this point. I really don't. I don't ship anyone except possibly Kaz and Inej, because that was just out of the gate. And just like, okay, they have feelings for each other. Just tell each other and make it a thing. But I don't know if I'd say I ship them. Not hardcore anyway. But I love the world they built. I love the magic system they're introducing, and like they do have some of the politics of the world integrated into the series, which is cool. Yeah, there's a lot of things. The freaking cliffhanger. He can control the fold, and the fold can, like, I don't know if it's the fold or if it's the Volcra that are leaving the fold after him. But either way, he has an army of shadow monsters following him out of the fold. And I have to wait for season 2, if and when that happens. Because with some, Netflix can cancel shows, even shows we love. So yeah. Anyway, for example, one of the shows that I think was a fan favorite that got canceled by Netflix was another show that I watched and has made the cut for 2021 Greatest Hits. That's Julie and the Phantoms. Fans are literally petitioning to bring it back. So we'll see. I would say the only reason this makes the cut is because of the soundtrack. That was definitely the best part of the show. The plot and some of the acting was a little bit meh, but the singing was on point. It was great. I think I had the entire soundtrack except maybe one, possibly 2 songs on my playlist. It's so good. They are all amazing singers, and they all play these instruments, and it's really good. I love the music. Also, there's Cheyenne Jackson, who's king at hitting high notes. I'll just say it. He hits those high notes. He does very well, and he plays a bad guy very well. He does that in both of his Disney Channel, well, not Disney Channel, but Kenny Ortega projects, because he shows up in Descendants 3 as Hades, so villain, and he shows up in Julie and the Phantoms as, I don't remember his name, bad guy. But yeah, it was an interesting show. Definitely, again, highlight is the choreography and the music and that whole side of it. But yeah, again, plot was fairly interesting, but not like blow my mind, this is incredible, like what the heck, I love this level. And the acting, I would say, was pretty good considering the main character was a teenager who hadn't done any acting before, and I didn't recognize really any of the other actors except the guy who plays Willie, who, what, his name, like Boo Boo Store or something, who is also in Descendants, and then, yeah, again, Cheyenne Jackson. So, who are in there because they have a connection to Kenny Ortega through Descendants. But yeah, other than that, I didn't recognize any of the actors, so for all I know, it's the first time for all of them acting, in which case they all did a very good job considering. And yeah, I don't really have a lot to say about Julie and the Phantoms. It was, again, amazing soundtrack, and it was a decent show. I would not mind a second season because more of the amazing music, but I'm not gonna be super crushed if they don't manage to get it back. Yeah, those are probably my top shows and movies that I watched during 2021, since, you know, I couldn't make a lot of videos due to the fact that my phone storage was crap throughout that whole time. But yeah, so top movies, excuse me, Dune, Dear Evan Hansen, No Way Home, they're fantastic. I also watched Ghostbusters Afterlife, which was really well done. Highly recommend that one. Just got the references to the original trilogy, or two, excuse me, that's not a trilogy. And just, it was done very well, and it stayed true to the original movies. So yeah, highly recommend watching that one. And then my shows, Young Justice, specifically season 4. I don't know if I will make it through this year-long wait for the rest of season 4. I loved it so much. The lore we got for the magic, the fact that we went back to some of the original characters. I am sad we haven't seen more Nightwing because I do love Dick Grayson in this show, but I'm not, I mean, it doesn't hurt. It is amazing even without him. And Orphan, and the setup, it ends on such a cliffhanger. I don't want to wait a year. But yeah, the 4th season of Young Justice, Shadow and Bone, I really love to see season 2 of that, and then Julie and the Phantoms. Yeah, I will try to get more videos out so I don't have to do something like this where I cram a ton of it into like an hour-long video. But yeah, just, I guess I will, yeah, put timestamps in the description for all who don't want to get spoilers specifically for No Way Home. But yeah, I will hopefully be out with more Nerd Rants videos, with more covers. My parents are gone for the weekend, so we'll see if I get more time to do stuff. Anyway, drop your thoughts in the comments. Which movies did you really love from this past year? Or what shows did you really love? Any thoughts you have on the movies and shows that I talked about? Anything you think I should watch, think I should read, think I should do a video on, I don't know. I'm open to suggestions, but yeah, until next time, I will see you all later.